Lunchtime Love, today's dating clinic. And I have a few people here live with me, and welcome. It's really lovely to see you. And then some of you will be watching on the recording. And thanks to those who've sent questions in advance, and to those who are here. And for those who don't know me, very briefly, Catherine Baldwin. I'm the author of this book, How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart, which I do recommend, obviously. I have some wonderful courses based on that book, which I'll talk about a bit later. And I run retreats and workshops and so forth. And I am married. I'm married at age 48 after many years of confusion, bemusement, not understanding where it was going wrong, why I couldn't get it to work out. Years of unhealthy relationships, years of singleness, and then lots of ambivalence with the man I eventually married. And I'm very pleased that I married him, and I wasn't ambivalent on my wedding day, which felt like a complete miracle. So I speak not only from professional experience as a coach and someone who has a really deep grounding in counseling and psychotherapy, but also as someone who has personal experience of finding love later in life, and of understanding where I was going wrong and my patterns and so forth. So I'm going to address a couple of questions while the recording is on, and then those of you who are live, I'll switch the recording off and we'll continue our conversation. I think there's a theme to the questions, and I feel like the women who are asking questions, those are live and who've sent them in, it is about being later on in life and either having had disappointments or not having had a huge amount of dating or relationship experience, not dated for a long time. And so how do we get back into it? How do we go out and date? How do we go and look for it? Does it come to us? So how do we, either if we've had disappointments or if we haven't been out dating for a long time, how do we go out there and feel secure, safe, and not get hurt again? And I think the most important thing is what some of you are already doing. It's kind of stage one, and it is your foundations. And how are your foundations of self-love, self-esteem, self-worth? How are your foundations of self-awareness? Because what happens when we go dating is there's always a potential for hurt, there's a potential for being rejected, there's a potential for being let down, being disappointed, there's a potential for feeling abandoned and rejected. And what we don't want to do is, having been disappointed before or having not dated for a long time, we don't want to go out and get burnt and get put off immediately. So I know many of the women who come to my events, and the men, they have a really good degree of self-awareness and they've been doing some work on themselves, and that is wonderful. And it continues. I continue to do work on myself, and I think I always will, because there's always layers of the onion. So I would suggest that everyone checks in with themselves and their foundation. So how is my self-esteem? And self-esteem comes from doing esteemable things. So what esteemable things are you doing for yourself today, this week, next week? What self-loving things are you doing for yourself? All those things we put off, all those things that we know that are good for us, like healthy eating and exercise and taking care of ourselves and not putting off our health concerns, and all those things that we struggle to do. I said to a client earlier today that lunch break that you are going to take and walk around outside during a lunch break, that is directly connected to your healthy future partnership. That is directly connected to you finding love, because it's very hard to get the motivation to do the self-care and the self-love. It's really difficult, especially because often we care for ourselves in the same way in which we were cared for by our parents or caregivers. Therefore, sometimes inconsistently, ambivalently. Sometimes we care for ourselves, sometimes we abandon ourselves, which is exactly what I have done too. So inconsistent parenting leads to inconsistent self-care. So I know how hard it is, but if you can know that that little step that you're taking today, buying yourself flowers, eating more healthily, going for a walk outdoors, doing 5 minutes of meditation, that is directly connected to you building up your foundations of self-love, self-worth, self-esteem. And that is directly connected to this vision that you have of a healthy partnership. So how are your foundations, and what can you do to build up those foundations? Because there is no point going out dating if we're just going to get burnt and get put off again. There is absolutely a point in going dating in order to get practice to go dating, and to get practice to go dating. So, you know, some of us can spend so long doing the introspective work, the personal development work. And I used to think that if I could just get myself to a perfect place of peace and well-being, and if I could just sit in Tibet for 6 months with my legs crossed and get myself totally sorted, then as soon as I dated, I'd be fine. But what happened was, no matter how much meditation and all that I do, as soon as I get close to a guy I fancy, it all goes out the window, and I forget a lot of my self-care and so forth. So I do believe in getting practice. So we build our foundations. So lots of self-care, self-love, self-awareness. We build our foundations, and then we go and practice. And we practice in a really measured way. So again, there is no ideal when it comes to dating, because we set a boundary, or we decide that we're going to do it like this, and then as soon as we see someone, we move faster than we want to, and it all goes out the window a bit. But again, it's just about doing it imperfectly, but learning as we go. So I would always suggest that you go dating in a supported way, so that you're not on your own. So you supported yourself through doing your foundational work, and you feel relatively well and healthy, and you have a good degree of self-love and self-acceptance and self-awareness. You understand your patterns, you have a good idea of your fears, and then so you're supporting yourself, and then you have support. So that when you date someone and you go on a date, and that little tap on your shoulder says, actually, a bit of a red flag, and the other part of you that's hungry for love because you're feeling lonely overrides the tap on the shoulder, ignores the red flag, that's where you need support. You need someone by your side. You need to be part of a group, or have a buddy, or be working with someone professionally who is able to say to you, don't override that little tap on your shoulder. Don't override that feeling in your gut, because you are wise. You are really wise. And what makes us override our intuition and override what we see as red flags? A couple of things. One is hunger. So how hungry are we for attachment? And if we're really hungry and craving, as I say often, if we go grocery shopping when we're hungry, starving, we just pour absolutely everything into our basket. There's no discernment. So we pick up rotten fruit and chocolate and crisps and beer and whatever else, because we're really hungry. And the same happens if we go, that's my dog. Shh, Layla, come here. The same happens if we go dating with a craving, with a deep craving for attachment, for love, for affection. So where do we resolve that craving? We resolve that craving in several ways. One is by doing what many of you already do, is that work on yourself. Understanding, why do I have a craving? Because something was missing, normally in my childhood. So I didn't get something back then, and I'm desperate to get it met now. And the thing is, and I am on this journey all the time, we have to let go of the fantasy that we're going to get what we didn't get back then. We have to let go of the fantasy that someone today is going to meet those needs that went unmet in our childhood. And we have to do whatever we can to meet those needs ourselves. So we deal with the craving by doing the personal development, personal growth, self-exploration work, by understanding what went missing in our childhoods, letting go of the craving to get that need met today, meeting that need as best as we can ourselves and with other healthy people, supportive people, friends, whatever we can do to meet that craving, which could be for affection, belonging, family, connection, love, being seen, being heard, taken notice of, being held in mind. So we try and meet those needs ourselves, and we try and get healthy people around us to meet those needs too. So we deal with the craving internally and by meeting our own needs. And if we can go dating without that craving, then we will be able to listen to our intuition and discern when the red flags show up, we'll be able to take notice of them and we won't override them. And then that dating experience, which might be your first experience in many years, it might be your first experience after divorce, it might be your first experience after heartache, or it might be your, you might have had many experiences. That dating experience, it may lead to a wonderful long-term relationship. Your first, I often say, it's unlikely that your first dating experience after many, many, many years will lead to a long-lasting relationship. So we can take the pressure off and we can go out, and this is just practice. I'm going to take good care of myself and I'm going to go and practice. And that what we will get from that dating experience is really good practice, really good learning, really good self-awareness. And hopefully we might get a little bit hurt, it might end, we might get rejected, or we might make a conscious choice not to be with that person. We might feel disappointed, but we will still be standing. We won't be knocked over. We won't be burnt. We might be a little bit singed, but we won't be burnt. So it's all about proceeding with that sense of, not having the craving, understanding our patterns and our fears, and seeing dating, taking the pressure off. And then it's about proceeding as slowly as humanly possible. And, I am a realist and I understand that we have physical needs and our hormones get activated when we see someone we find attractive. But if you can proceed as cautiously and slowly as possible while not putting up defenses. So we want boundaries, not walls. So ideally you want to decide with a buddy or a friend or a coach, you want to decide what your loose boundaries are. So that could be, you go on a coffee date and you stay for 2 hours and then you leave. And then what will happen is that boundary, you'll overstep it because you'll fancy the person and you'll stay for 3 hours or 4 hours. But what we want to do is step back from the thing that might get you into trouble, and you're an individual. But for me, kissing gets me into trouble. Going back to somebody's house gets me into trouble. Getting into a car gets me into trouble. So I needed to try and step back and be supported in my choices around the boundaries that I wanted to set, so I could proceed cautiously and carefully. I feel like I'm answering all the questions at once without directly answering them, but there was a question about someone who says dating fills them with dread. They came out of a relationship 18 months ago, want to be in a relationship with someone, but they don't have the strength to do the letdowns, trying to figure out who's genuine, And I would say what I have just said. So trying to figure out who is genuine, that will be so much easier if you're connected to yourself and to your intuition. And the last little webinar I ran, we all made a commitment to do a little bit of connection to our inner knowing every day. We made a new commitment. So even if you're doing it, what's your new commitment? 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That could be sitting with your hand on your heart. That could be a meditation on an app. That could be lying down. That could be walking outdoors. But a new commitment to connecting to your inner knowing, because that is directly connected to the relationship, the romantic relationship that you will have that will be successful. So if you are connected to your intuition, you can trust yourself. You can trust yourself to know whether to stay or go, whether to go on this date or not. Don't have the strength to do the letdowns. That came in that question as well. I think the thing there is we need a reasonable degree of emotional resilience. Otherwise, it's not good to go dating. And if you've read my book, in chapter 2, I talk about the inner oak tree. So that connection, that rootedness, connection to the inner knowing, and having our needs met as best as possible so that we feel balanced and grounded and rooted. So if you haven't looked at that, look at chapter 2 of my book. Similarly, dating after divorce, how will I know when I'm ready? Can I find love again? Absolutely. And if I was working with a client with this question, I would first I would learn from my first experience, or from that marriage experience. What happened? What piece of intuition did you perhaps ignore? How did you drift apart, or why did it end? Was that marriage to someone whom you now realize wasn't right for you? So I would learn absolutely as much as I could from that relationship. What were my patterns? Did I not speak my truth? Did I not stand up for myself? Did I not have good boundaries? Did I do too much? Did I take on all the chores? Did I get resentful? Did we not communicate? What happened in that relationship? Can I find love again? Absolutely. And I would refer back to what I have said about after disappointment, after heartache, after relationship breakdown, after divorce, how is your heart? So how is your heart? How much time have you spent with your heart? How can you cushion it and soothe it and really give yourself lots of love and compassion? Have you forgiven yourself? How is your inner child? So what is she feeling? Is she feeling abandoned, rejected, like she's got it wrong, like she's stupid, like she can't date? Like, what is she saying? And what does she need to hear from you, her loving parent, her adult? And that's, those of you who understand the sort of inner child, loving parent, critical parent work, when you go dating or look at relationships, it's about checking whether who's leading the show, who's in the driving seat. Is it your wounded child, hungry for love and connection, terrified of abandonment and rejection, so terrified that she'll override her instinct, so hungry that she'll override her instinct? Is she in the driving seat, or is your loving parent in the driving seat? And is your loving parent talking to your child who's in the back seat, saying, it's okay, I've got this, and I am here for you, and I hear that you're lonely, and I hear that you're hurting, but I am here to support you. And this stranger we're about to meet, this stranger, we're going to take it slowly. We are going to, I'm going to lead this. I'm going to check my intuition. I am wise. I have life experience. So we're going to put the inner child with all her cravings and longings on the back seat, with the seatbelt on. maybe a couple of blankets, so she's really cozy and she feels safe. And then we're going to take the driving seat and we're going to drive really carefully. We're not going to drive like a, I've never used this analogy before, but I think it's quite a good one. We're not going to drive like a maniac down the motorway at like 90 miles an hour, chasing the other fast car. We're not going to do that. We're going to maybe just sit in the, you don't have to go in the slow lane. You could sit in, you could cruise in the middle lane, or you could go in the slow lane. But you're going to be really careful. You're going to check your wing mirrors. You're going to check that your car is all well maintained. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this analogy. It's really good, I think. You know, I'm going to check that my well-being is okay, and I'm going to go forward slowly. And before I make a move, I'm going to make sure that it's safe to make a move. And of course, you have to strike the balance between you know, the other extreme, which is I have these walls, nobody comes near me, I've been hurt before, or I don't know how to love, and I've got these walls and nobody's going to come near me. And that would basically be sitting on the hard shoulder. You don't want to do that either. You want to keep moving, but with caution. So I don't know if I've addressed the live questions, because as I was chatting to those of you who were live, I didn't keep making notes. There's a question about, do I go looking for love? For example, use a matchmaking agency, something like that. So really proactive, or do I wait for it to come to me? In terms of the matchmaking agency, I don't know. I mean, I can only say what my intuition is on that. And I looked into matchmaking agencies and I didn't use them myself because it didn't feel organic enough for me in terms of the process. But I know lots of, well, I don't know, but I'm sure there are lots of people who have used them and for whom they've worked. I suppose before I did that, and before I spent my money, and I don't think it's about sitting on the sofa waiting. And I do think it's about being proactive in lots of areas of our life, some of which I've already talked about, and some of which I know many of you will already be doing. So proactive in the area of self-love, self-care, giving myself what I need. So do I have friends? Do I have a reasonable social life? Am I satisfied with my hobbies or my work and those things? It's about being proactive, understanding your patterns and your fears. So what are my relationship patterns? And if I haven't had many relationships, what are my fears? And connecting the fears with the patterns. So proactive in those areas, proactive socially. So one thing a month that will bring you into contact with new people, or 2 things a month. And, I know this is stuff you've probably heard before about being, widening your social circles. But that's what did it for me when I'd done my foundational work, and then I wanted to meet more people, and online dating just didn't really have the patience for it. So I just opened things up. I started personally, because this is who I am, I started doing hiking groups, and I went away on a weekend with a group, and I discovered what those groups did. They didn't bring me the man, but they reconnected me with my authentic self, what I love doing. They made my eyes shine and my face glow because I was really happy doing those things. And they gave me hope because there were numerous single people on those walks, trips, whatever, who seemed to be reasonably normal, even if they weren't for me. So is there something you could do that you haven't done, that is one of your passions or hobbies that you could bring into your life, or you could try something new? Have you spoken to your friends that you just letting people know, I'm interested? And often we don't, we're embarrassed or ashamed of being single or of not having made a relationship work. And we don't tell people. We don't tell people that, if you know of anyone, I'm single and I'm actually looking for a relationship. And hopefully you'll have some good friends who you are able to say that to. And then there's the online dating, and I know it comes with all manner of challenges and pitfalls, but I think if we can make sure that we're not craving, and if we can make sure we're connected to our intuition and our inner knowing, and if we can have boundaries around it, like I am going to do 10, like half an hour of messaging twice a week, and I am going to move people very quickly to the phone or to a coffee, and I am going to keep it really boundaried when I go for that coffee, and I'm going to only go for an hour, and I'm going to combine it with some other really fun thing that I'm going to do, going to meet a friend after, whatever you need to make it fun and enjoyable and keep it safe. So is there a different way to approach online dating to how you've been approaching it right now? Perhaps, and I know this is common because I know from people I work with, we talk ourselves out of clicking on the people who we actually want to date because we think, oh, I'm not good enough. So maybe you take a few risks, knowing that you have your foundations in place, and that if you're rejected, it'll be okay. So approaching online dating differently, and then matchmaking, if the money is available and it's worth the time, it might be worth exploring. Yeah, I don't have experience of that, and I don't personally know people for whom that's worked, but it must have done. And I suppose it's like an accelerated version of online dating, or more sort of specific version. So as you're here live, I would like to know, I hope I've answered the questions that were mentioned at the start before I put the recording on. If you don't mind being recorded, ask a question, unmute yourself. If you would just like to put it in the chat, please do that now. And then in about 5 minutes time, I'm going to switch the recording off. But if anyone has any comments or questions, and you want to make them, but if you do make them with your voice, please note that you will probably be recorded, and then I'll have to go through the laborious process of chopping it out if you don't want to be recorded, which is so annoying. So please, if you don't want to be recorded, pop them in the chat, and then I'll answer those, and then we'll have a little bit of time. But while you're doing that, let me just tell you what I'm very passionate about, because I know it helps people. My book, it's a really wonderful, if you haven't read it, it's a wonderful place to start getting to know the kind of work that I do. And I have, I've talked a lot about support and accountability, and I know a few of you who are watching this have done my online courses, but I'm starting my small group course for women called How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations, again in September. It's a 3-month program. You will be part of a small group of people. And those of you who were here at the beginning before the recording, just having that, that interaction, that's what the group calls are like. So we have group calls, and there's optional one-to-one calls with me. And there's lots of really insightful information in the form of videos and documents that you work through outside of the group calls, and then you bring your learning and your challenges and questions to the group. And there's an accountability system, and that course has changed people's lives. I know it has. I have various testimonials that I can share with you. One of the ladies who's done both my courses, Laying the Foundations and Date with Courage, Clarity and Confidence, has just got engaged. Another lady, she also did one-to-one with me. Another lady is in a relationship. Another lady has moved in with her partner. Another lady has completely changed her life and her career. So it has sometimes surprising impact. I'm just going to share 2 things in the chat. So you could book if you want to talk about that course, book a free discovery call with me. That's a half an hour call, and you can look at the courses via those links, or if it's easier, you can just send me an email and we can set up a call. You can take the courses in your own time, at your own pace. You can combine them with one-to-one with me if group work isn't your thing. So there's lots of options, and I've got shorter courses that you can start with and experiment with if you'd rather do that. So someone's been on the hard shoulder, how to move out of the that lane. So gently, with lots of self-love, self-compassion, self-forgiveness. So I would make sure that you have forgiven yourself for the years that you didn't date, so that you're not giving yourself a hard time. I suppose I would suggest a sort of two-pronged approach. And I know who's asked the question, so I know there's been lots of already lots of foundational work, so lots of inner healing and so forth. But I would sort of run through a checklist first. How is my self-esteem? How is my self-worth? Do I feel lovable? Do I feel emotionally available? How is my own capacity for intimacy? Do I feel willing and able to be intimate? Often a lot of body issues come up for women, I know. So am I accepting of my body? So I would do a checklist. Am I aware of my relationship patterns? And even if there hasn't been relationships for a long time, or not much experience, those relationship patterns will show up in other relationships. So you may be someone who struggles to set boundaries, or struggles to speak their truth. You may be somebody who has slightly wobbly foundations and needs a stronger inner oak tree. So I would do the checklist. Sorry about the dog. And then I would also make sure that you feel sort of that you're enjoying your life to a reasonable degree, so that there's enough social activity and friendship. Shh. Social activity and friendship and balance. And then onto the dating. I would decide what boundaries work for you. So if we think about online, maybe ask some people who are in a similar age range what sites work for them, what online sites work for them. And I do have a group called the Collective, the How to Fall in Love Collective, which you could join. And normally membership comes with one of my courses, but contact me. You could join that group and ask the questions about the sites that people are using in your age range or in line with your values. I would then think about your boundaries. So in terms of online, what are my boundaries? So just having some gentle boundaries around interaction online. So I'm going to look at the online sites 3 times a week, and I'm going to spend an hour each go. I'm also going to get some help and support with my profile and my photos, and I'm not going to do it on my own. So I'm going to get a girlfriend on board, or I could help with that. You know, I'm going to not do it on my own. And then what boundaries do you want when you meet people face to face? So I'm going to commit to, I'm going to try and get people from online to face within, you know, a few days, within a conversation, within what I don't suggest is you have these endless WhatsApp text messages. It's just because what that builds up is a false intimacy that when we meet, we think, don't fancy them anymore. That's definitely been my case. Built up a false relationship online, met somebody, didn't fancy him at all. It was very embarrassing and hurtful for him, very hurtful for him. Yes, setting boundaries around how you communicate, and then trying to meet people face to face, and then setting boundaries for how you meet face to face. And then I would also get as much practice as possible, just going out, being sociable, possibly thinking about Well, when I go out and if I do an event or I join a group or I do something, how open am I? So when I walk into that room, how confident am I feeling? How open am I feeling? Am I feeling scared? Am I feeling closed? Have I got my walls up? So using it as an exercise to observe yourself and where you are. Um, and just making sure that there's enough, that there are opportunities. There are opportunities to meet people in your life. So are there opportunities to meet new people? And one of the things we do on my courses is, are you looking people in the eye? Are you having conversations? And this goes from the supermarket to wherever, like opening up conversations, perhaps being a little bit flirtatious where appropriate, just being open to conversations. And I'll just notice what was written, that we can be too open sometimes, and that goes back to our foundations and taking care of ourselves. And not, and with the other boundary, if you read chapter 6 in my book, it's all about boundaries, and there's a boundary around how much we share with people on dates. So what some of us tend to do, especially if we come from a place of trauma, is we want to bond instantly, and we just want to like stick together with someone like glue. And so we just share all this stuff about our lives and our traumatic experiences, and they share theirs, and this is like high intensity, oh, we're made for each other because we've got similar wounds, and then those wounds just like go like this, and then we're addicted and we can't get out. And we haven't had any moment to think, do I actually like this person? We've just like totally trauma bonded. So how much do you share of yourself on a date? Think about that. Think about how quickly you want to move. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. And I always borrow a phrase from my wonderful therapist, which is, you have to get into the muddle. You get into the muddle and you learn by doing. So with your foundations reasonably in place, you then learn by doing, by getting into the muddle, not doing it on your own. And before I embark on that process, I would just make sure I feel pretty good about myself. The worst thing is, like, you suddenly get asked on a date and you've got absolutely nothing to wear. So do you have something to wear? Should you be asked on a date next week? And this isn't about looks and needing to be a certain way for someone. It's about feeling good in yourself. So do you have something in which you feel good? So if you get asked on a date, or if you get asked on a social occasion where there are new people, do you feel pretty good in yourself? So I hope that helps, that question. Are there any more you'd like to put in the chat? And if not, I will switch the video off. And for those watching on the recording, please do get in touch if you'd like to join that program, the 3-month program that starts in September. It'd be really lovely to have you. And if you've done it before and like to join again, you'd be very welcome, and we could talk about how that would work. So thank you for watching, and I'm here every Thursday through August at 1 o'clock UK time. And those of you who are on Instagram or TikTok, yes, I am on TikTok. I'm going to be doing some lives there as well. So follow me over there as well. So I'm going to stop the recording.